The color spread for One Piece chapter 1143, titled God's Knights, features the Straw Hats racing on flying fish. Although, Jinbei is just swimming. And on the side, it says speed is the weapon. Saul finally caught up to the sleepwalking children and told them to stop. He called their names, but it was no use. There was also a strange cloth next to them, and it's actually one of Gunko's arrows. Robin reminded Saul of the injured gym teacher's warning not to touch the sleepwalkers. Saul remembered, but he didn't see anything nearby, and letting them go like this would be way too dangerous. So he reached out. But just before he made contact, imperceivable thorns surrounded Ylva and cut into Saul's hand. The pain was horrendous. The former Marine rolled and writhed in agony while clutching onto his arm. Robin and Chopper didn't see anything. If only someone with observation hockey was around. Also, I guess I expected Chopper to stick around with the other children who are laid out and not walking, so he could do some doctor stuff, but I guess that's not happening. Back at the school, Anj was making a desperate snail call. She reported that all of the Walrus School students suddenly fell into deep sleep. And despite being unconscious, 9 of them were walking away. The Western Village was in an uproar as Anj expressed her unawareness of the cause. Not only that, but strange beasts of colossal proportions have also arisen from the forest, which only made their concern grow even more. With the use of a telediction snail, which is exclusive to Elbaf, it was also expressed that the 9 children are headed in the direction of the 8th branch. Nami couldn't believe that all of this was happening so suddenly. She wondered if the kids would be alright. At this point, she might even think that this is all because Luffy and Zoro freed Loki. Jinbei could only wonder what was going on. And Brook's skull was still below his belt. Have any of you guys ever imagined what it would be like to eat any of these giant foods? Anyways, the 8th branch happened to be on fire at the moment, so things were not looking good. Now it turns out that Elder Jarul is Ylva's great-great-grandfather, so he was really worried. And despite slapping his sword, Usopp made his way back to the old-timer. And they, like many others, were too drunk to be of any use. But man, Oda is so cultured for having Brook do the "What's up?" face from Scary Movie. Just then, the sound of an old-school siren was blaring from a cloud ship overhead. The crowd really appreciated their speed. They're the Elbaf equivalent of firefighters and had everyone counting on them. Which just reminds me that Fire Force Season 3 is almost here. But as they approached, something strange happened. There was something rising from the trees. A massive undead soldier. It swatted the ship away like a pesky fly. Everyone's eyes and tongues flew out in shock. Meanwhile, Saint Summers was laughing his head off while stuffing his face with food. The Celestial Dragon really enjoyed the look on Saul's face when he was pierced by thorns. He used the expression, "Love is both roses and thorns." Although, he wasn't too happy about Gunko's cold reception. Apparently, the more love a person has for a victim of his thorns, the greater the pain will be when they try to touch them. So he was really excited to see their parents show up. Summers imagined them trying to hug their children, only to be torn apart by thorns. He anticipates the horror-induced tears of the children when they realize what happened. This absolute sicko ate the thorn fruit, making him a Briar Man. Again, he tried to get a rise out of Gunko, but it was no use. He made a big deal about her being too stoic. Now, if you notice, the way he falls out of his chair is rather unique. His body is made to resemble a swastika, or at least the Buddhist rendition, but given their attire, desires, and station, it definitely leans towards Nazism. St. Killingham asks Gunko what route she's using to guide the children. She's going with the central path. Although there are other thick branches, going this way will have them make it to the ocean cloud she saw near the village. So in the coming chapters, we can expect the villagers to helplessly watch as their children are abducted. That's pretty awful. But we also know that Luffy and Zoro can definitely save them. Since the thorns are most painful against loved ones, strangers like Luffy and Zoro, who are even willing to beat the giant kids up, should be just fine. Besides, it's not like the two of them can't handle a bit of pain. The real problem is that they're in the underworld dealing with Loki. Like the dark poet he is, Summers described being in the center as vulnerability, an especially harsh reality for anyone too helpless to move. Keelingham lets Summers know that the food needs more salt, and just as the Holy Knight thought about salt, a beam approached his head. He fell into a deep slumber, and his comrade reached into his dream. He pulled out some especially fancy salt. This is thanks to his mythical dragon devil fruit, modeled Keelin. Despite having a very giraffe and deer-like appearance, Keelin are described as being dragons in Chinese mythology. I expected him to be more in line with the Japanese Kirin, but his name lines up better this way. Being able to force people into unwakeable slumbers is really strong on its own, but since it's caused by a beam, at least dodging is an option. Also, it makes so much sense that he would have a dragon devil fruit, considering the fact that he is a celestial dragon. It's the one zoan form that they would actually revere. They had Dr. Vegapunk create artificial dragons and an artificial version of Kaido's dragon devil fruit, the very same devil fruit that they once had as a prize on God Valley. That said, if this is his hybrid form, then I cannot wait to see his full form. He woke Saint Summers up once he had the salt in hand. This is the same power he used to create the nightmare monsters from the children's fears. Keelingham can use this power many times simultaneously. That said, the salt was perfect. It's funny to see Nika drawn like a Captain Underpants character. This power is made all the better when you think about how abstract and ridiculous a child's imagination can be. If consumable food and titanic monsters are possible, the possibilities are astronomical. The versatility of this fruit is insane. Now, although the ship they plan to take the children with is made for giants, they should be able to create their own rainbows with a painter. At the same time, Gunko showed a bit of personality as she really enjoyed her meal. Summers noted the peculiarity of Elbaf's culture. Once that's handled, they can head back home. Summers did not like the sound of that. He treats these missions like games, and this one was way too easy. Gunko was full. She asked Keelingham about the calories of the meal, but since it's a dream meal, it is calorie-free, so it's more pleasure than sustenance, meaning he can't exactly use it to combat the hunger crisis in the Holy Land. Gunko warns Summers to stay on guard. She expects them to face some trouble soon. After all, she saw a certain pirate ship in the village, one that belongs to the Yonko, Straw Hat Luffy. And man, I will never get tired of respect being put on Luffy's name. At the same time, the children were headed towards the heart of the fire. It was spreading more quickly than anticipated, because of course, the Holy Knights have no idea that Loki started another one. Regardless, they don't mind the kids burning away since there are still plenty more back at the school. Down in the underworld, Loki dared his brother to make a move. He said that there's no way the smaller giant could stop him. None of them could even lift his weapon. Gerd refused to let him victimize anyone else in the Sun Realm. Loki was actually betting on victims since the flames were spreading. Huffing, he gave them a choice. Their first option was to lay down their weapons and leave him be. Sanji turned to Luffy, hoping to be clued in on what's going on. Luffy was worried about the severity of Loki's injuries. The other option was Loki going on a rampage and taking out everyone in the Sun Realm. Loki continued to pressure them, and his brother was quick to fold, much to Loki's delight. But Zoro told Harudin not to fall for it. Luffy accepted his previous vow to handle Loki if he gets out of hand. Harudin warned Luffy to stay away from Loki, or he'll get zapped, something that Luffy is actually immune to. Loki accepted Luffy's statement as their response. Gerd warned him that there is no turning back from such a crime. She begged him to think of the children, which is to say that Loki hasn't actually done anything heinous enough to be irredeemable just yet. Zoro shouted at his captain to keep his word. Besides, Loki's wounds were reopening. Luffy prepared to drop the giant, who had already accepted his fate. With just a nudge, the entire situation changed. Loki toppled over in a flash. According to Zoro, he was already on death's door. Just standing took everything he had. His plan probably involved passing out after getting away, but even that would have been unlikely since he lost so much blood. And this sort of play is very fitting for a trickster. Now it's up to Luffy if he wants to treat the giant or leave him to die. Luffy still wants to talk to the guy. He was already in bad shape when they found him. With that, it was clear to Road that someone tried to kill him. which is unrelated to his previous crimes. Thinking to himself, Road began connecting some dots. Luffy asked Harudin to save Loki's life. Regardless of the kind of person he is, Luffy doesn't want to watch him die. The sworn vassal of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet paused. A bit of time passed. According to Gerd, it would take months for Loki to fully recover. They've created a makeshift bed for him. They also redid his shackles. If they're going to properly tend to his wounds, Loki shouldn't sleep here. But bringing him back to the village would be a death sentence. Luffy was impressed by Loki's horns. With his helm removed, we can see that he has the same signifier of the ancient giants that his father, King Harold, once had. So yet again, I can't help but think that the king cutting off his horns as a statement against Elbaf's old ways was a really bad look. What kind of message does that send to your young child that you see one of their most prominent physical features in such a negative light? Harudin, who doesn't have horns, began to reminisce. He remembered their father wishing for the two of them to get along in his absence, along with the desire for them to support Elbaf. And even then, Loki was noticeably taller. But despite those wishes, Loki was unkind to his brother. He refused to accept such a weakling as his big brother. As a reminder, Harudin is illegitimate because his mother belonged to a different giant culture. As such, Loki used to taunt his older sibling since he would never be their father's true heir. He ridiculed Harudin's mother for having impure blood. So in the present, Harudin raised his axe. He moved to finish Loki off once and for all, but his crewmates held him back. The giant captain refused to forgive his brother. Loki insulted his mother and killed their father. Loki woke back up. He told Harudin to get it over with already. The whole crybaby warrior routine was stale. It's clear to him that Harudin is so hung up on their personal drama that he can't see reality. Surely he wasn't running around with the same misconception as everyone else when it comes to their father's fate. He asked his brother if he really believes he killed their father in cold blood. Harudin grimaced. So it looks like the truth might finally come to light. But how much can you really trust the word of a trickster? This might be our last chance to predict what really happened, so if you have any ideas, let us know in the comments. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.